Welcome to the workshop. I'm Josh, and in this video we've got a fun episode where we're going to sharpen 5 different knives on 5 different not sharpeners. If you get in a pinch and you don't have your work sharpener with you, whether you're in the field or at a vacation rental, these are some tips that may help you get a sharp knife when you need it. All right, so the 5 different ways we're going to show to sharpen a knife are a carbide tipped saw blade, the window of a truck, the spine of another knife, some sandpaper on a mouse pad, and a ceramic mug. We'll also look at stropping on both leather and cardboard. And we're just going to see if we can get enough improvement to go from a dull knife that can't hardly hack through some paper to maybe cutting through or slicing some paper or any bite at all on a thumbnail or whatever other sharpness test you want to do. First up, I need to dull these knives. I'm going to take each of these knives and make about 5 or 6 passes on the anvil here and get to what feels like a reasonable level of dullness that's consistent across all the knives. Cool. All right, so I'm going to spend less than 3 minutes on each knife, on each type of sharpener, and see if I can get a knife that cuts paper. Right now, they're all fairly consistently dull. I got them each to a level where they're not cutting anything, they're not sticking on my fingernail, and it's not biting into paper. These knives are not sharp. They've seen better days. First up, we've got a carbide tipped saw blade. I'm going to use this like I would maybe a carbide ripper. Imagine like the V style pull through sharpener, except for it's not a V, so I've got to use one side at a time. I'm improvising here. I'm not entirely sure the best way to use this. Not sure this knife is going to cut paper, but it's definitely a little sharper. That saw blade removes some material. Let's head out to the truck and see if we can get a sharp knife by sharpening on the top of the window. Cool.
Fancy one. Power windows.
Power windows. Yeah. I thought it'd be cool if it was like... All right, I'm using the unpolished top of a truck window and I'm gonna see how well that works. Oh. All right, I think that's all the time I have on the window. It's a much more fine sharpener or abrasive than some of the others, so I don't think I got as sharp, but there is some improvement. Let's go test it out. To sharpen on the spine of the knife, I'm going to use a reverse stroke, kind of like I'm using a hone or a strop. was able to feel the burr get pushed back and forth while I use this knife. Keep in mind, I use the knife with a lot harder steel. This one has S30V, and I'm actually not even sure what the steel is on these Columbia Rivers, but it's a pretty soft steel. When sharpening on sandpaper, I think one of the best methods is to stick the sandpaper to something like a mouse pad. This is also really cool because it gives you a convex type edge because the mouse pad helps to form around the blade edge. So I've got an adhesive back sandpaper and I'm going to stick it down onto the knife pad, give a couple strokes on 120 and a couple strokes on 400. These are just typical 150 millimeter sanding discs. I have to say that one felt the most like a knife sharpener. I actually liked the soft backing, made it feel like I didn't have to be as concerned about the angle. I was able to raise a burr on the 120 and I think polish that a bit on the 400. It looked a little bit harsh on the edge, but I think it's a sharp knife. Next up, we've got a ceramic mug. The cool thing about a ceramic mug is that they are everywhere, including in a rental house if you have dull knives when you show up at the Airbnb. Use the bottom of the ceramic mug. It has the unpolished finish around the rim, and that's the abrasive part that you'll use, similar to many knife sharpeners. That felt like it got sharper, but it might have taken a long time, or it would take a long time if the knife was much bigger and you were really trying to get a razor sharp edge. All right, before we test to see if these knives got any sharper, I'm going to show you the baseline. This is a brand new, just fresh out of the box knife. We're going to see if it gives a nice clean cut through the paper. There we go, perfectly sharp. Let's see if we get anything close to that after these knives were severely dulled. Starting with the knife sharpened on the saw, the sharpening process was interesting to me. It was really easy to sharpen the one side like a carbide ripper or a pull-through sharpener, but sharpening the opposing side was a bit of a challenge. Mostly, I'm not ambidextrous, that would have helped a lot, and the carbides are all facing the same way. I'd be surprised if this knife cuts through paper, but it did seem to remove material. I would say it's probably sharper, but not something that I'd definitely recommend. You could definitely use the carbide tips to scrape metal off of something that maybe chisel grind, just one-sided, but a double beveled knife like this one is going to be a challenge. It did get sharper, something you could use in a pinch on a job site, but it was also pretty hard on the knife. Maybe a little bit of damage and inconsistency as it just rips right through. Next up, sharpening on the truck window. I noticed that with that process, although the knife did get sharper, it was a really slow sharpening process. The abrasive on the top of the window was really fine, and so I don't think there was a lot of material removal. If we restored an edge, it's a little doubtful, but again, something that may be used as maybe a final step if you're combining it with another method of sharpening. Definitely not much improvement there, but again, the rate of material removal felt really slow, and I can still feel a little bit of a burr. Maybe if I spent a lot more time, it would be better, but like I said, combining this with another method of a more coarse abrasive, faster material removal might be helpful. Sharpening on the spine of the knife. I like this because other knives are probably readily available if you have one. Maybe not, but around here there's plenty of knives. So I use the knife with S30V steel, which is a lot harder than the steel that comes standard on this CRKT. It felt like it was doing something, but again, hard to know. There wasn't a great amount of material removal, but I did feel like I was pushing the metal around. So maybe I straightened up some rolled spots and we'll have some sharp points on the edge. Definitely a lot better than some of the others. I think that there's some serious improvement there, although it seems inconsistent along the edge. Like I said, maybe what I did is straightened up some of the sections that were rolled, but some sections that were really dull probably didn't get any sharper. It's really more of a honing method than it is a true sharpener. Sharpening on sandpaper felt like it worked. The coarse 120 grit was definitely removing material, and I raised the burr, and then when I switched to the 400 grit, it seemed like it was polishing. I did notice that it could cause a little bit of damage to the edge because that sandpaper because it was on the soft on the soft mouse pad. That mouse pad curved around the bevel and it contacted the blade face above the secondary grind. So this may cause marring and scratching on the blade, but if it's a knife that you're using on the job, in the field, wherever you're at, and you just need to put an edge back on it, this might work pretty well. I'm curious to see how sharp it got. I felt like I had a good cut in the beginning, but we're still dealing with a little bit of a burr. It does bite into my thumbnail, which the others haven't done as well. I think it's a lot sharper than the other knives. It's just going to take a lot to make clean cuts on paper. We're definitely getting somewhere. Finally, sharpening on the ceramic mug. The cool thing about ceramic mugs is they are everywhere. If you do go to an Airbnb, you'll likely have something there, and those knives are always dull. There's a small work surface, and so there was a lot of time required to get a sharp edge, but at least you know that a ceramic mug is basically the same material that sharpeners are actually made out of, so it's something you can trust on your blade. I felt like I could have spent a lot more time getting sharp, but we'll see if we made any progress. I think this might be the best yet, despite those last two cuts. Seen a lot of sharpness near the heel, which I noticed as I was resting on the edge of the ceramic. I was able to have good control near the heel there. Less so out at the tip as I came off the edge, but that's just a technique thing and trying to get the most done in a quick amount of time. Definitely sharper. I think that's my favorite method so far. All right, so that's sharpening, or I guess some of those would be more honing methods and some of them may be more sharpening methods. The basis of this is you have to find a material that is harder than the steel of your knife, and then you can move or reshape or even remove some material of your knife and restore somewhat of a sharp edge. The next step in that would be stropping. And so there's a few natural strops that you'll find out there in the world that are very common all over the place. One of them is cardboard and one of them is leather. All right, so let's take the two best performing knives that we sharpen on sandpaper and the mug and give them a quick strop on cardboard and leather and see if they make even more improvement. I've got just normal corrugated cardboard here and my old leather belt. So first we'll start with a knife sharpened on sandpaper. If anything, I think this one has the most room to improve because it was sharpened on a relatively coarse abrasive. We'll start on the cardboard. I'm going to hold it near the edge of the table, and that way I can use my hand and drag it across the surface. All right, we'll set that aside, and we'll try the other one on the leather. I've got the belt pinned down here with the anvil so that it stays in one place, and we're going to do the same thing. I have no compound on either the cardboard or the leather. If you did, that would obviously make it work a bit better, but assuming you don't have those if you're in a pinch. All right, time to see how we did. This knife was this one sharpened on the ceramic mug and stropped on the leather belt. In theory, this should be pretty sharp. Definitely getting some relatively clean cuts. I think it could be sharper still, but that's not bad considering that we significantly dulled these edges. This knife sharpened on sandpaper and stropped on the cardboard. It feels like it's sharp. It's biting into my thumb. Let's see if it cuts paper. I'm pretty impressed. The cardboard and sandpaper is not a bad way to sharpen and then hone your edge or strop the edge. Two materials that are readily available on a job site or in the shop if you're needing to sharpen in a pinch. Obviously, the ceramic and leather should be a decent sharpener, and I think the results were pretty good. Both of those are fine abrasives, and we use those when we build sharpeners, but perhaps the ceramic wasn't quite abrasive enough to really restore the edge. Could have used the full sharpening rather than just a ceramic hone with light material removal. Thanks for watching this fun, slightly different episode of the workshop this week. We covered 7 sharpening hacks if you include our stropping methods. A carbide tipped saw blade, a truck window, the spine of another knife, some sandpaper on a mouse pad, and a ceramic mug, and stropping on corrugated cardboard or a leather belt. It's fun to see the world as knife sharpeners, and if you're picky like I am and you always need to be using a sharp knife, then these are some ways you can get sharp in the field, on the job site, when you're traveling, who knows. Let us know what your favorite way was in the comments, or if we missed something, let us know what your favorite hack is. Subscribe to our channel here, and we'll see you next week back in the workshop.